This is the Vision 79 podcast, where myself, Mason, and my friend Sander discuss recent developments in our business and our personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and we have a shared vision for success in business and our personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their early years. They often say they wish they had, and given we believe in learning lessons from others, we intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. Today, we'll discuss why failure isn't a bad thing, why admitting you're wrong is not a problem, how to overcome the difficulty of owning it, and much more. But first, we like to start each episode with a brief update of where we're at in our business and personal lives so that when we look back on these episodes in the future, we can gauge roughly where we're at in our lives. And we've been on a spree of recording a lot of podcasts in the last 7 days.
Yes.
To make sure that we can upload consistently while Sander's out of town. But this has been our longest break between the last couple episodes. So we have a little
and it's not even a normal size break. It's only 6 days.
Yeah, normally it's 7.
Yeah.
And this feels like super long because it's not a day and a half.
Right.
So what do you have for your business update?
Business updates. Continue to work on drop shipping stuff. I have product stuff I'm working on. An avenue of product research that I'm utilizing through Facebook ads. Working on the store build out through the template right now. I have a meeting about that either tonight or tomorrow night. So just preparing for that, kind of buttoning stuff up, working through it, whatever, general stuff, social media, logo, name, blah, blah, blah. So that's by and large in terms of business. I guess I have life updates that kind of tie into business, but business wise, that's pretty much what I got.
You want to just roll into it then? Into your life update?
Sure. Yeah. First thing I got down here is work has been wild. We had a leak in one of the boosters, or booster components, by one of the bathtubs, as well as one of our kits are leaking. So it's just been a little bit hectic at work, writing some work orders, actually going on in the field doing stuff, but it's been actually kind of fun. It's nice to have a change of pace from sitting around in the office. Next thing I got is health. I'm continuing to do my nutrition stuff and eat better. The only junk food I've had in the last probably 2 weeks has been, I had some microwave popcorn because I really wanted popcorn for whatever reason.
Sure.
And then I had a singular pack of small goldfish. But other than that, it's been fruits, nuts, berries, yogurt, real hot meals, actual food. So
A lot of dick. Awesome.
yes.
There's this really hot girl who she dated one of my best friends in high school, and after they broke up, we were talking and we were getting close. But at the time, I didn't have anyone else in my life who was into fitness apart from the kids I rode with. And even then, I mean, you've met Zach. Zach's not a fitness expert. Zach would tank a handle of Fireball the night before a big test and then go crush the test on the ergs. But I was like, how do you eat? How do you stay in such great shape? Because her workouts weren't crazy. I was used to heavy, intense cardio for 90 minutes a day. And she did I don't know, some Stairmaster, and that was it. And I was like, what the fuck are you eating? And she was like, generally, if you just follow the 80-20 rule, you're good. And I was like, what is the 80-20 rule? 80% of the food that you eat has to be healthy and 20% can be bad. And you can dice that up into you have a little snack every day, or you eat strictly clean 6 days out of the week. And then on the 7th day, you can bowl out and eat whatever you want.
Yeah. So I've held between 138 and 139 pounds after my Kratom detox. So super happy with that aspect of it. I kind of want to sit around there. I feel comfortable. I feel leaner. I definitely feel skinny as shit. So part of my update as well has been working out. So right now, this week I've only done at-home workouts, but just basic stuff. I've started to respond to messages, take calls, do phone shit while I'm doing my walk jog, just to kind of multitask in that sense a little bit. Save me a little bit of time because I realized I probably spend a solid 30 minutes a day just responding to random shit or doing something on my phone, whatever.
Gotcha.
And I could easily do that while I'm moving instead of sitting.
Yeah.
So started doing that. My sleep schedule has been a lot better. I've been going to bed between 8:45 and 9:15 every day, and then waking up around 5:30.
That's early too.
So I do like it. This morning I was a little bit later to get started. I woke up around 5:45, 6. So a little bit later end of things, but got myself moving, got ready, walked to the beach, looked at the sunrise, walked back, and I was ready to roll by 8 a.m. just working and doing stuff. So I've had a good productive morning, but that's kind of how my schedule has been running so far. Um, and a point I want to touch on as well, this is kind of ties into life and business. I mean, health, fitness, nutrition all kind of ties into business, because when you're not healthy or fit, then your business suffers too. But this especially ties into business as much as it does life. I've really dialed in on focused work, like really focused work. I listened to a Hormozy podcast this week, and he was like, you probably don't even know how to work. It takes you 10 years to figure out just like how to work. And I was like, man, like, I feel like I'm working hard. I feel like I'm doing shit, but, my productivity isn't where I want it to be. And I started really digging in and did a Google Calendar and kind of dug through stuff. And I was like, where can I cut out time? Like really analytically, like looking at a sheet, not just like thinking about it conceptually, like where could I save a little bit of time, right? And so that aspect of it has actually really helped me, being like, no, like this next 2 hours is going to be me on my laptop without my phone, just working. Like I have to keep moving through tasks. Like even if I like want to stop or, don't feel like doing something, just like do something, move through stuff. And that has really helped me, that kind of focused work style. I've been working more at home too, which has actually alleviated some of the distraction that I have, because a lot of people come up to me at, Power, Kraken, or wherever.
Yeah.
So that's been nice to do. And I realized that the more time I spend at home, generally the less money I spend as well. Not just on drinks, but also on like, if I get hungry, on food or whatever. So that's been a benefit in my life that's kind of flowed into my business productivity as well. And then in that, also looking at phone time, continuing to reduce that a little bit each week. And I also went through Quicken again and like really honed in on everything alongside, this kind of like focused developmental health, life, nutrition thing I got going on right now. So
The fundamentals.
yeah, the basics, just kind of, getting them from the 60% they were probably at closer to like 85 or 90. Yeah, kind of my goal right now. So just working through those things. It's been going well. I'm super happy with my productivity this week. So we had some podcast stuff as well that is uploading now, which is going well. Getting through that stuff for, all you guys and for us in the future. But that's about all I got.
Sweet, dude. I got the opportunity to go do some showings with Grace on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
Her sister and her fiance have a shoe company. They're an Amazon store. So if you buy shoes on Amazon, Amazon sends that order to rotating carousel of stores. So if you buy shoes, there's a chance that you get it from their shop. They have like, I think it's like a 1,500 square foot warehouse right now in Miami, but the rent is expensive and they live with Ralph's parents, her fiance. And so they want to buy a large lot of land in like the Vero Fellsmere area to build a warehouse and living space on. So Grace was showing them, she had like 5 properties that she was showing them. And I was like, I want to come too, to get a feel of what it's like to do showings. How do you contact the realtors? How do you gain access to the property if the realtor isn't available, et cetera? And then what does the process look like with an actual customer when you're out looking at the land? And I learned a lot from that. It was really cool.
Very nice. I have a quick question actually about that business. So they are essentially buying shoes that someone else is marketing on Amazon, that then whoever is marketing it on Amazon or whatever, it then is potentially fulfilled by them, right? But the marketing and advertisement and all that stuff is done by someone else.
Yes,
right.
Like for the Amazon orders, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not marketed or advertised. It's just Amazon.
I guess I kind of have like a more general question. For me, I'd see myself getting anxious about putting the marketing in someone else's hands completely, like no control, do not know. I'm like a complete victim of the ad quality and marketing quality of the products I've already purchased. Do you feel that same way, or do you have a different perspective on it? How do you see it? Would you have that same kind of like nervousness about that style of business model?
It's not a style of business that I would really do, just because it's too close to drop shipping, where I don't control the product or the marketing, so I'm not comfortable with it.
Sure.
Because I don't manufacture the shoes, I don't control where I get the shoes from. So they'll go to like a Nike store and they'll shut the store down for 2 hours and they'll pick out like whatever 200 boxes of shoes and they'll buy them like at wholesale price. So Nike doesn't lose any money on it. Maybe there's like very small margins for Nike, but they get it at like a wholesale price. And then when Amazon orders roll in, then they ship those shoes out. They also have a storefront in Miami that is like, I don't know what it's called. They call it the I can't remember what they call it. They have a name for it, but it's like Ralph's shoes, let's say. And that's his store where he can sell Nike, Adidas, whatever. It's not his shoes. It's not like the Ralph branded shoes, but
at least he has some control over the marketing in that sense, right?
yeah.
What I don't mind about dropshipping, although the lack of product control does concern me, at least the ads I put out there are in my control.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the scaling ad factor is within my control.
Right. Well, by being an Amazon salesperson, because all Amazon is a bunch of these. Like Amazon isn't a conglomerate. It's like it's a bunch of different businesses that are just linked together, right? The benefit to being the Amazon store is that you don't have to buy shoes from a website that you're not used to, or you don't have to do like a shitload of advertising because Amazon does the advertising and Nike does the advertising for you. So you can go buy the shoes from Nike, like Nike.com, or you can go to Amazon and get them there because Amazon can ship them faster. Maybe they have a better deal. And then that's where you get your shoes from Fran and Ralph. So they don't have to do the advertising because they advertise products that are already pretty well out there. Like it's not a discrete thing. It's like the brand new Nike whatever shoes is what they're selling. But I definitely don't know enough about the business to like give recommendations or like understand it enough to pass judgment or anything. Ralph talks to people.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, if it's working for him, go for it. I mean, you know, it's just curious.
Ralph knows a guy in, I think, New Jersey, and they're doing like 100 million a month, and they have like 3 fucking enormous warehouses. They move like pallets every day. And they make a shitload of money. So they want to build like a 6,000 square foot warehouse down in Vero and Fellsmere. But that was pretty cool. And with one of the listings, the guy who is the seller's agent, so someone owns the land and there's an agent trying to get it sold, Grace has had a tough time communicating with him. And it's looking like that's the property that they want to put an offer on, and this other agent like isn't doing shit. And there's you can be the agent for both the buyer and the seller and then get the commission for both sides. So like if standard buyer's commission is 3% and standard seller commission is 3%, it totals out to 6% you pay to your real estate agents, right? Well, if you don't have both, if you only have one, instead of getting 3%, you can get 5%, which is pretty cool. And I hadn't considered that before, but you can go into people who maybe their house isn't selling, and you can go to them, and I don't know if it's legal to say directly to them, like, your agent sucks, you should just work with me as a buyer and seller's agent. I have buyers lined up. I don't know if that's legal to do, but if he terminates his contract with that real estate agent and then signs with Grace, she could be the agent working both sides of the deal, which would be pretty cool. Yeah. And then I haven't done much on the real estate course, largely because if I sit down for like a 2 or 3 hour time frame, I'm not able to cram the memorization that I need to. Like this entire course is memorize everything, take the test, and then forget all of it. And if I memorize everything for like a 2 or 3 hour chunk once a day, it'll take me like 4 weeks to get through it. And I definitely will forget the shit from day one. So I'm going to do like 10 or 15 hour days over winter break, and I'll do it in a week, and then I'll do my test at the end of that.
Yeah.
So I've had the time to do a little bit more rowing stuff, which has been really, really fun.
Nice.
I'm calculating the team records from like every state competition they've been to, every national competition they've been to. And I've really enjoyed it because I realized that I have worked with teams in the past, like frequently with, rowing and then the SAE team and at work, but I've never been able to assemble my own team. So now I have the opportunity. The board of directors right now are a bunch of parents. They're going to age out. They're going to leave. So I need to reformat the board to a better structure and then find people to fill those positions, which gives me the opportunity to pick my own team, which has been super fun. So Justin and I have been working on that lately too.
Very nice.
So that's business. For the life update, I think I'm getting all of my Christmas presents for everyone for less than $200, which is awesome.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah. Last year I spent like $1,200. So this is a market improvement. Helps that my parents are splitting up. We went racing last week. This is not the only time we've worn the suits this week. That was a ton of fun. I got an email back from the race guy saying that they're going to change their system in the new year. So hopefully if we can go racing at the end of winter break, we can record it. I think it'd be fun to put the footage, if you're able to get the track record, on Division 79 page. If we go back in the new year and you're able to break the record.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Need a good cart and a good day.
we should film some stuff that day before we go on track, and then film all the sessions just in case you get the track record. We could put like we can have Justin edit like a little video together.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool.
That'd be sick.
That would be sick for a couple reasons. The first is it'd be awesome, but the second is people who go to OKC will want to see that video, and then that will bring them to Vision 79, and then they can see our.
Yeah, well, I actually told some people I was going to post my lap up online.
Sure, go for it.
So I can tag Vision 79.
Yeah, that works.
On that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when people see, you know, a 106.4, they will click on it. Even though it's not the record, that is
it's close.
99.9% there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that's very cool. Yeah.
The record.
Yeah, I know. We had some good racing. I got within 0.3 of the record after really honing in, and not just once, but several times in that racing session.
Yeah.
Very, very good consistency. Super happy. You also were in some great stuff.
Yep.
So started working through it, getting, some points down, improving.
I'll
right?
wait at turn 13 and then push you over the line. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I want to go back.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
My oil level sensor went out, so I overfilled my car with oil, which was awesome because the low oil light comes on all the time. So I was like, it's just time for more oil. And then it came on the next day, and I was like, hang on. This is either new engine bad or this is I just overfilled my engine bad. And both are bad. So I checked it, and it was like 1 dot over the max line. And I was like, okay, so it's not filled up like too much. I'm just not going to rev the piss out of it so I don't blow out my fucking oil seals. But it's just the low oil level sensors out.
Yeah.
So I'll replace that probably over break. I'll probably ask you to borrow tools and replace it while I'm cat sitting or something.
Sounds good.
Joel's mushroom tinctures are done. He's selling them now. I should have brought it for you to try. I totally blanked on it.
I didn't realize he was selling it. You didn't tell me.
The other day, I was leaving, and he was like, oh, if you ever want to try the mushroom tinctures. And I was like, is that them? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, fucking yeah, bust out the box. I'm going to buy some right now. So he has lion's mane and chagu.
Okay.
I don't know what chagu is.
I know both.
Yeah. But I bought the, after listening to the guy on Joe Rogan a while ago, I bought the powder, like the lion's mane and turkey tail powder, to mix into smoothies, but it tastes like ass. So I haven't actually used like any of it. I made one smoothie and I was like, this is terrible. And I stopped. But I asked Joel, I was like, can you do lion's mane and like all these other ones? And he was like, yeah, they're on my list. Like I'm going to start making them. And I was like, I will sign up for a subscription model. Like if you, I want to support you. So I bought one bottle and it's awesome. I've been taking it every day and I love it. But if you run into him next time, ask him about it. He gives
like
free
factor,
samples.
but fungicide.
Yeah, kind of. It's like a supplement kind of, right?
Yeah,
It's good. It's good. They taste fucking great. They don't taste anything like the powder. They're sweet. One of them's sweet. He does another one that's like balsamic vinegar flavored or something. But I want him to finish up his branding and then have him on here to plug the shit out of it.
Yeah.
I swear by it. I love it. Makes your tongue numb. It's cool. And then I'm going to do a crazy winter break workout routine. I've been working out better lately because there's like potential for us to go racing in the fall. And if that happens, I want to be like ready to go. I want to be competitive. I'm not sure if it's actually going to happen because I thought about it. The benefit to being on the board with Space Coast is I have access to their equipment. So if I want to take a 4 somewhere, I can train with Space Coast crew equipment and then go row with Space Coast crew.
Gotcha.
The problem is I don't have enough guys to put an 8 together. So it would have to be a 4. That's fine. I like 4s. But the equipment that Space Coast crew has suck. Their 4s are old. They're Vespoli, which is not the brand that I like. Vespoli is like the Ford of the rowing world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to push the board. I'm going to say, listen, we haven't bought a new 4 in like 10 years. We need a new one. The team needs a new one. I need a new one. But I don't want to buy Vespoli because the reason that I call it like the Ford of the rowing world is because they're like half the price of other shells, and they're heavier. And that's because they use more layers of carbon fiber and resin to make them more durable so that they last longer.
Got it.
And for high schoolers, that's exactly what you want because it's cheap and it's durable and high school kids are idiots, right? But I want to buy a Filippi, which is like the Ferrari of the rowing world. I have found a couple options for a really competitive price, like new ones for a really competitive price. And we don't have a Filippi rep. But if we can get a sales representative to partner with our team, they could potentially get us deals on them too.
Cool.
So I'm going to push the board to try to buy one of those so I can go racing in the fall. But
Nice.
so my workout routine is going to really ramp up over the winter break. I'm going to start doing 2-a-days again. So far for December, I've averaged probably like a 35% workout average over the past like 3 months. So like 30%, 40% of the days I'm working out. But so far in December, I'm at 58%. So I'm up significantly. And then I'm going to start doing 2-a-days over the winter break as well.
Cool.
So I'm going to start fucking busting down and going crazy. And Grace won't be home for most of the break. So there's not going to be like snacks or treats at home or anything. It's just going to be like fucking, I'm just going to go monk mode and go absolutely crazy. I'm excited.
Chicken and rice.
Chicken and rice and working out twice a day. I'm so excited. So that's what I have.
Sweet. You want to get into a podcast?
Sure.
Awesome.
So our main theme today is on how to admit that you're wrong. I have a little intro. Our education system has taught us from a young age that failure is bad and that we should avoid being wrong. This can lead people to becoming defensive when they realize they're wrong and even sometimes lie in favor of admitting that they were wrong. So in this podcast, I want to talk about why failure is a good thing, why admitting you're wrong is not a problem, and how to overcome the difficulty of owning it. Do you have any like broad sweeping statements before we get into the first segment? I don't have anything really.
Yeah, I usually honestly don't write anything too broad and sweeping.
That's why I didn't
and
write
filter it into the main topics.
Yeah, that's why I didn't write it.
But I do have a good amount for the main topics, so I think that we can dive in with that little intro.
Okay, so I have another intro for segment 1. I wasn't sure if you had anything. So segment 1 is on why being wrong is okay. So my introduction here is, instead of talking about why being wrong is okay, I would like to start with establishing a baseline of why people think being wrong is not okay. I've personally witnessed people become defensive when they realize they've been proven wrong, and have personally experienced frustration from others on my behalf when I'm wrong about something. Fundamentally, I think being wrong is perceived as a weakness because it implies that the subject lacks something others possess, which is knowledge of the situation. So do you agree with that assessment? And what are your thoughts?
Man, I think your assessment is close. I don't know if it's.
You think I'm wrong, you motherfucker?
I think that if someone is frustrated with you for being wrong, it's not necessarily that they have the knowledge that they expect you to possess. It's that they expect you to have the knowledge regardless of whether they possess it or not. Like, they just expect that of you. And they're like, why? They don't necessarily have to have the knowledge for them to be frustrated that you got it wrong. You know what I mean?
Can I read an example?
Yeah.
We might be thinking of two different situations.
Okay.
Both of which can be valid. In school, being wrong means you have not learned the material that has been taught. In other words, person A is speaking and person B does not understand. Person A doesn't know any other way to teach it, and person B just doesn't get it. In this situation, they're communicating inefficiently and neither know how to resolve it, and that can be frustrating. Frustration is generally seen as bad, and thus being wrong is seen in the same light. People then learn that they can avoid this frustration and wrongness by simply lying or deflecting. So the teacher expects the student to know because they're saying it, and the student just doesn't understand.
Yeah.
But I can see other situations in which your situation.
It could be something like, a manager asks you to complete a task.
Right.
And then you screw it up. But it doesn't necessarily mean the manager knew how to do it. The manager just expected you to know how to do it.
Right. Or they hired you to perform that job.
Right. It's nice that we have this topic this week because I've been thinking about it a lot passively. Not because I've actually been writing the sheet. I actually wrote the sheet a week ago. But just thinking about it passively, it's your school example is the first one I thought of. And it's like, kids are taught not to be wrong because being wrong is bad. Wrong is to be avoided. Wrong shows a lack of learning. Wrong shows a lack of growth. Wrong shows weakness. Wrong shows a lack of competence. And each one of those is just about framing, right? Like, each one of those things is all just in your frame of mind. It's like, wrong isn't necessarily bad because it can actually be good because you could have avoided a bigger failure had you gotten away with it in the first place, or you have the option to now learn from it, right? Wrong is to be avoided. Why avoid it? It's inevitable. If you constantly avoid being wrong and want to be right about everything, you'll take no risk in your life at all. And then it's like, what is your life going to amount to at that point?
It's kind of like you've never crashed on track, but that means also you've never exceeded the level of maximum grip.
Right.
Have you really ever gotten to max grip?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Right. Wrong shows a lack of learning, right? I think that it can be viewed as the polar opposite of that. Wrong can be learning. You're actually going and trying things that you don't know how to do and experiencing them and figuring out what went right, what went wrong.
Right.
And going from there. Being wrong shows a lack of growth. I think you could view that as completely the opposite, right? For the same reasons. And then wrong showing weakness, I think, is an interesting one. I think this kind of touches at your initial question of like, or in your initial statement for the topic, you mentioned how people don't want to be wrong, right? And I think that has a lot to do with a weakness aspect of like, if I'm wrong, that means I didn't know, and that means I'm weaker as a person or I'm more incompetent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily true. Like you can just make mistakes, and I think the competence comes from learning from the mistakes. It doesn't come from the lack of competence. Doesn't come from making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how you handle it afterwards. And I think people get caught up in that scene, and as young kids, we're taught, to not be wrong from a young age. What, do you think that we should reframe how we teach kids about being right or wrong? Do you think that there's potential to kind of like help the next generation to feel like it's okay to make mistakes and be wrong?
It's tricky when it comes to school because I think it's really easy to slip from being wrong is bad. I'm going to slap you on the wrist if you do your times tables wrong, to the participation trophy, like you're going to graduate no matter what.
Yeah.
You have to learn the material to graduate. And you can do that largely through positive reinforcement. But the thing is, with positive reinforcement with kids, they don't want to, like, the positive reinforcement for doing well in school is so that you can go to college and get a job. Kids don't fucking care about that. So it's easier to use negative reinforcement. There's yelling and getting grounded and, bad grades, red cards, whatever, right? And that's not something that I've been able to figure out. I think that,
well, I think once you like dampen being wrong too much, it suddenly becomes right. Like once you make it so okay to be wrong that you can, skate by and do anything, suddenly everything is right now and there is no wrong, right? And I think the line between right and wrong is really important and valuable.
Yeah. I have a good example here.
Yeah.
Which was I took Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and I sucked at it. I was really bad. And my parents were getting pissy with me because I kept getting bad grades and wouldn't get any better. So my dad had to sit down and tutor me on it. And he was yelling at me as I was bringing home bad grades. But when we sit down to do the problems, he wasn't yelling at me. Like, he was watching me do the problems wrong, but he wasn't yelling at me for it. And he told me, I was getting frustrated with myself because I couldn't get the problems correct. But he told me it's okay to get them wrong once or twice. You're learning, but you need to learn from those mistakes. So do something wrong once or twice and then do it right. And then do it so many times that you can't get it wrong again. And then we'll move on to the next thing that's wrong. But we're going to pick one thing. You can make 5 mistakes in one problem. And if you pick one thing to fix, go do the next problem, get it wrong again, but get that one part right.
Yeah.
And so I think that one way to fix it would be for kids, give them multiple opportunities. Like, it's okay to get things wrong once or twice, but if you get it wrong a third time, you're fucked. So like test retakes were awesome for me because I would fuck up the first time, not for lack of studying or even lack of understanding the material, but I don't do well in test scenarios and I wouldn't know what to expect to be on the test. And the test questions would be asked in a frame that I wasn't expecting. And so I wouldn't do well on the tests. And if they give me a retest, often with extra time too, I would do way better for like not even much more studying, but just now I know what I'm prepared for and I know how to read the questions. I think that would go a long way in teaching kids that being wrong is okay. Because if you can be wrong once or twice and have it not negatively impact you, that's fine. And some kids will take advantage of it and not learn from it. But the kids that are going places are going to glean something from that, I think. There's always got to be bad eggs, right?
I hear that. I think even if we didn't change anything about the structure of how we teach kids today, like physically, didn't change the structure at all, I think the mindset of being wrong is okay and you are on the road to becoming right is an important frame of mind to instill. Because, even if you only get one chance at test and you screw it up and you fail the class or whatever, like, as long as there's a mindset of like, it's okay, like, I'm in the process right now, I can get this isn't a complete failure and I'm not a waste of space, right? Like, if that mindset shift was there, I think that'd be really beneficial.
That TikTok I like that's like, I'm working on something, right? He's like, I'm not in shape right now, but I'm working on something. I don't have $1 million, but I'm working on something. It's like that. I think I was fucking terrified. You've been in math class where they write out the problems on the whiteboard and then they have you go up and do one and you have 5 minutes to do it and then everyone sits down and you go over the answers. I was fucking terrified of that. I would always pass it off on someone else or go to the bathroom and not do it. I would try to bail out of it as much as possible because I didn't know how to do the problems. I was like 3 years behind in math. I wasn't a step or two away. I would get up and not know what to write down to make it look like I knew what I was talking about. And sometimes I would just leave it blank. And the problem is that the teacher would then they know who's doing what problem. So they'd look at you and they'd be like, why didn't you write anything? And I'd be like, I don't know how to do it. And they would be like, we just finished a 30-minute lecture on this and you still don't know how to do it. So it's like, it's like public shaming and judgment and not constructive at all. I had one teacher that was constructive. It was my AP calculus teacher, Mr. Johnson from Edgewood. You fucking rock. He rose for the master's team at Space Coast Crew.
Oh,
love
cool.
Dad, Sean Johnson. But when I wrote nothing, he would look at me and he would be like, what do you think the first step is? And I would say, honestly, I have no fucking clue. And he would go, okay, I'm going to teach you the 4 steps that it takes to solve this problem. And then he would do it one at a time. And he would basically do the lecture that he just gave in a condensed Cliff Notes version just for me, along with the rest of the class. And he would teach it directly at me, but address the class as a whole. So it's like he's giving me a one-on-one lecture to get me to pay attention, but he would act like other kids in the class also didn't know how to do it. And pretending, even if other kids did know how to do it, like pretending that I wasn't alone in not knowing how to do it made me feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah. It's funny, I've had a similar instance to that. It wasn't about learning or being wrong or anything like that, but it just reminded me when you talked about how your professor made you feel like you weren't alone in that. I fell off the monkey bars on my neck when
that
I was
explains a lot.
Yeah, when I was in 3rd grade.
Tough to remember. It was a hard fall.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Anyways, I got the wind knocked out of me. I got a fractured rib. I got sent to the hospital because they thought I broke my neck.
Yeah.
Which thankfully I didn't. But anyways, the next day they were like, there's been a couple incidents on the monkey bars. We're not going to let people hang upside down anymore. Like, we don't want you to feel like you're the only reason, right? And obviously inside you know, they're not letting people hang upside down because I fucking fell off and almost broke my neck, right?
Right.
But it is comforting to at least have the appearance of other people are, potentially, it alleviates the finger on you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've just figured out why kids kill themselves a lot more than adults. And it's because when you're an adult, I don't care if I'm alone in something because you're alone in life, generally speaking, right? And I can choose my friend groups and the people I hang around. And if I'm not going to hang around people who are going to judge me or belittle me for not knowing something. But when you're in elementary school or high school, the 30 kids that you see every day, that's your entire life. That's your entire social circle.
Yeah.
That's everybody that you have. You can't change it. And you have to be around these kids every day. So if you don't like these kids or if they don't like you, you don't have a choice. If you piss off a gang when you're in prison, you wake up every morning with that gang and they will hate you every day. And that's what school is like. And it could feel endless because when you're in high school, you don't know that 4 years is not much time at all. It's just, this is what life is. And when I leave, life is going to be exactly the same with coworkers at a job. And if people don't like me here, they won't like me there. So what's the point? I'll just kill myself now.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but it's not something that I had considered until now. Because why did I care about what those kids, why did I care about being alone or not in a class full of 30 kids? Well, those are the only 30 kids that I know.
Right.
Interesting insight.
I pulled this Elon Musk rough quote for this podcast as well.
I have one too.
Oh, you do? From Elon?
It's not a quote, but it's a story. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, this is like a rough quote story.
Yep.
So Elon Musk was talking to, I think it was a reporter, and the reporter was asking him like, "Oh, like how did you feel when the rocket blew up on the pad?"
That's what I have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see,
Man, that's funny.
Oh,
I guess
Elon Musk on first rocket blowing up.
yeah,
That's what I've written.
yeah. Well, yeah, how I summarized it from my memory, maybe you can correct me.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sure.
when something, the reporter was like, did you feel bad? Like, were you stressed? Like, were you upset? Were you panicked? Like, how'd you feel? And Elon was like, I felt good. And the reporter was like, what? And he was like, honestly, it was relieving to have it blow up on the pad. And he was like, why? And Elon was like, well, because when nothing goes wrong and it's a test flight, you wonder what you got away with that you wouldn't have otherwise done on another flight. It's like when it blows up, it's like, oh, clear issue. It blew up,
Yeah.
right? And it's like I really like that mindset of like, it's only a mistake if you let it be a mistake. It can always be a learning opportunity if you give it that option.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I really love that story too. And I think what it illustrates really well is if it's your first time doing something, expect to be shit at it
Yeah.
and be okay with it.
Yeah.
The issue comes in if you're Michael Jordan and you have 3 NBA championships under your belt and you fuck up, you've learned these lessons already. You know better. Your team should know better. You can have higher expectations. And if you're fucking up and making mistakes that you've already made and already learned from, that's when being wrong becomes not okay. You shouldn't be the fucking engineers that were okay with the O-ring seals on the Challenger, right?
Right.
You're an engineer. You've seen this shit before. You intentionally made the call because of pressure from whoever, the government or something, right? Like you could have spoken up and you chose not to. That's not a mistake. That's a major fuck.
Well, actually, that particular incident's really interesting because there were a lot of engineers who did speak up.
Exactly. But the guys who greenlit it were hearing from the professionals and they were like, nah, we're just gonna go for it.
Well, also there was pressure from the president.
Yep.
At that time, Reagan.
Yep.
Because he wanted to give a speech about like it was the first flight crew that had a woman on it, I believe.
She's a teacher.
Yeah, a teacher. And so it was like a little bit more diverse crew, and he wanted to give a speech in recognition of that. Blah blah blah. I read some stories about some of the engineers that went home to their wives and were like, "It's gonna blow up on the pad, and it's done." Like they were so upset and frustrated, and they were like, "It's gonna blow up," and then 12 hours later, sure as shit,
Right.
Right.
And that guy who made the call to let it go ahead knew otherwise. He had gotten information from people who have seen these things before.
Yeah.
And he let it go anyways. And that's a mistake that you need to be hard on yourself. Like that's not a mistake that it's okay to be wrong with, right? It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong if it's your first offense, right? Like if you could not have known better or should not have known better. And critically, even if you did know, it's important and it's good to admit you're wrong in the face of having known better, right?
Yeah.
So like that guy who let the rocket go up, should have stepped forward and said, I fucked up and I made a mistake. And it's a mistake that I should not have made.
You know what's really wild too? The autopsy reports for the astronauts were hidden by the U.S. government, although they were supposed to be public knowledge. They were hidden by the government, and there was a lot of speculation. And then years down the line, some information came out, and the astronauts actually died due to drowning.
Yep.
Which is really crazy. Like they had a approximate 2-minute and 15-second fall from the point they were at in space through the ground, and they were just like panicked, or presumptively panicked, trying to save the spacecraft. I mean, that's just a terrible way to go. But yeah,
Drowning in the ocean?
well, I just like panicked. You're in a rocket and then suddenly blows up and you're falling, and you're like, what the fuck do I do? And you can't do anything. You just see the water coming to you. You probably get knocked out when you hit the water.
Got it.
And then, drown just because you're knocked out. That's what I would assume.
This might be worse. When you're burned at the stake, you die from drowning because your lungs melt and you're still breathing. But all of the blood and shit gets in your lungs and you die via drowning from shit getting into your lungs.
Well, there's probably arguably worse deaths, but it's not one I would pick if I had an option.
Oh, it is. Yeah, that's a terrible one. Saying like they could have died in atmosphere being burned up and then drowned while burning, or they could have fallen into the ocean and also drowned there. Both are horrific.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not as good.
Have you seen the Kobe Bryant autopsy from the helicopter crash?
No.
It's fucking brutal.
Really?
It's fucking brutal. Yeah, it's the Kobe Bryant autopsy, the Challenger autopsies, and then the descriptions of the Grizzly Man are like the 3 most impactful like autopsy / death things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Grizzly Man one is crazy.
Was that the guy who got torn up for like 9 minutes or 13 minutes or whatever?
Yeah,
Slowly.
he was like one of the One with Nature guys, and he would get flown out to remote Alaska once a year.
Oh, yeah.
And stay like 3 or 4 months. And he was friends with all these. He thinks he was friends with all these brown bears. And one trip he took his girlfriend with him, and they were staying out there for like 3 months. And the guy came to pick him up at the end of his trip, and he wasn't at the hookup point. And so he landed and he got out and he started walking towards the camp, and he saw the tent shredded. And a bull grizzly bear charged him. So he got in the plane and left, and they came back with rangers. Grizzly bear charged him again. They shot the bear. Huge fucking grizzly bear. Aggressive. New to the area. So like maybe you could say he was friends with the bears in the area and a new bear came by. But the tent was shredded. They found bits of this guy and his girlfriend in the bear. They were fucking torn all over the place. But he would take camera equipment with him to document his journey every year. And apparently this bear attack happened in the middle of the night. And the audio and video were recorded separately for his documentary. And here his girlfriend had started the audio recording. And so there's a full like 18-minute video or audio of him and his girlfriend being eaten alive by this grizzly bear and ripped to pieces. And there's a fake audio that you can find on YouTube that is haunting. The real one supposedly has been destroyed by whatever curator has it, but there's supposed to be a copy of it on the dark web somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
That's the only time that I've actually considered getting the Tor browser and going to look for it, because listening to the fake one is so haunting. Like some sick fucking broken part of my brain wants to hear the real tape so that I can play it in my head every time someone says that bears are friendly. And so to show them that tape, because my ex-girlfriend was like, oh, bears are friendly. And I was like, they are not, they're animals. And she was like, well, brown bears, but black bears are friendly. And I was like, no, they're not. Like, they're fucking wild animals. They'll kill you if they're hungry. They'll kill you if they're in their territory. They're aggressive. They can be non-aggressive, but like, a human calling another human a bitch is the same as a grizzly bear killing you. Like if they're a little pissy that day, they'll fucking rip you apart. If you don't believe me, listen to this. And I haven't found that tape, but I would really love to hear it from like a morbid perspective.
I hear that. That's terrible.
Yeah. Anyways, I digress. Back to the main theming here. My first instinct when thinking about this was like the classroom setting with kids. And I made a connection, which is that it sometimes is easier to lie than it is to admit to being wrong about something.
Yeah.
So in that math setting, I might make up a reason for why I got confused or thought it was something else. Or if I fucked up and I did something wrong, I would just like try to pass the blame off to someone else or pretend that I didn't know, even if I should have, right? But can you think of a time when you lied because it was easier than being wrong?
Oh, many times.
You're right.
Many, many times.
Isn't it an interesting connection?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, man, there's, it's tough because like sometimes the lie doesn't come back around on you.
What do you mean?
Like sometimes you can get away with a white lie and it won't kick you in the ass later.
Sure.
But like there's a large enough percentage that make it like on the tipping point of worth it versus not worth it. And the only thing that makes it worth it or not worth it is your mindset about lying. Like, is it wrong or is it right?
That's a great
If you think it's wrong, yeah. If you think it's wrong, then it's not worth it, right? If you think it's okay sometimes, then you'll probably lean over to I'll tell a couple lies here and there, right? But man, I mean, I think we talked about this maybe last week or the week before, podcast wise.
Last week.
Yeah, about my parents and like, kind of navigating what I could tell one versus the other and whatever.
Right.
I mean, there was many times where I lied because it was easier to lie than admit like I was wrong about something, or even tell the truth that I knew was going to be, poking at them.
Right.
As of recently, Um, Honestly, I think the example that's most recent that comes to mind specifically for lying about something when I knew I was wrong
Mm-hmm.
was when we were in the U-Haul truck dumping stuff at the dumpster at FIT. And there was a cop that kind of sort of pulled up. And so I tried to get around the back road and realized I couldn't get around it. So then I backed up and went the other back way, and he found me and caught me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I just got lost and confused. I was trying to blah, 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 whatever, right? Like that was a time where I was like clearly in the wrong,
Yeah.
but I lied my way out of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
You know, like it's hard. It's tough for me to think about like when have I been clearly wrong, but I've lied about it,
Yeah.
right? I think that as of recently, um, at least I feel as though I've been pretty good about admitting my mistakes or admitting when I screw something up. It would be actually cool to track, like in a journal or like a quick notepad, like when I screw something up and what I did to resolve it. I think that could actually be really useful.
Yeah.
Because, like, thinking about it now, it's like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. But, like, maybe like tangibly, I'm actually making more mistakes than I think I am.
Yeah. Well, I have this
Great
thought as
idea.
well.
Do you have a pen? You always have a pen.
And
There you go.
in the third segment, I have something written about this. I can't remember. We'll get there eventually, but it's something along the lines of I tried to remember the times that I was wrong and admitted to it, and I couldn't come up with very many of them. And I think it's either because either A, I don't think I was actually wrong, or B, it's arguable whether or not I was right or wrong,
Yeah.
which could just be my own stubbornness, or B, I just usually fess up to things and it's not a big deal. And I had this analysis of my person A and person B teacher and student situation. Fundamentally, analyzing this situation, persons A and B are concluding that the solution to the communication issue is to get frustrated and lie rather than keep a cool head and find a viable solution. A quick check to recognize if you're progressing or not is to think about the motive behind the actions that you're taking. Being wrong is okay if it's part of the learning process. So, are you lying because it will make things easier and it'll go away, or are you lying to be constructive? So, like with the cop, you can tell the truth to the cop and then gamble on whether or not I don't even know what the penalty is for that. Pay a fine that we can't afford because we just graduated college with broke as shit. Get your license revoked. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or lie and just make it go away in 5 minutes. Is it wrong? Is it not? Is the lying worth it? I don't know.
We have an interesting comparison example to that. That's very similar. I got pulled over in the Miata for expired registration.
Mhm.
And I genuinely did not know I had expired registration.
Yeah.
This was the reason. I had recently, I say within the past 3 months, I had transferred over my stuff to Florida from Massachusetts before I got pulled over. And when I had my Mass plates, I had 2026 plates on it, right? And so I had registered the Miata into 2026, June 2026, and it was all good and dandy. But the plates they gave me at the DMV, although I thought I prepaid a 2-year registration on it, I looked back at the receipt and I hadn't.
Right.
Actually, that was my mistake there. At the time I pulled over, I thought I did. I thought maybe there was an error in the system, whatever. So when she takes my Florida license, obviously it comes up as expired, right? If I'd given her my Massachusetts license, it would have been mismatched to the plate, but it wouldn't have been expired registration because she would have pulled it up by that driver's license number and I would have been fine, right?
Right.
And so as she's giving me the ticket, I'm telling her all this stuff, and I can just tell that she thinks I'm completely bullshitting her.
Right.
Like, I can just tell. And for me, like, I knew I was telling the truth. Like, genuinely, I did not know that my shit was expired. I didn't look. I thought I was fine, clear to go.
Right.
Because I just gotten the plates, and I was like, why would they be expired? I just got them.
Right.
Right. And when I went back home and I looked at all the paperwork and I looked at the 2 plates, I was like, I was right in my story for the most part, but I screwed up the fact that I prepaid for 2-year registration. I never paid for that.
Right.
This is my bad. I registered, right?
Right.
But she was like, just set up a court date. I'll dismiss this. No problem. So I set up a court date, and I intend to bring in my 2026 plate and my other driver's license and be like, I wasn't lying.
Yeah.
Like, I was telling the truth, just because I feel like, I guess, like, there's a part of me that, there's not too much of me that really cares. Like, there is a part of me that kind of wants to uphold the integrity. you know, but also like I feel like it would be refreshing for a cop to hear that like someone isn't just lying to their face every single day.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, I just want to be like, I wasn't lying. I was telling the truth. I know that you were doing a favor by telling me you'd write the ticket off if I brought a court date, but like I genuinely like I thought I was good. You know?
Yeah.
And so like kind of counterexample, like, I completely told the truth or what I thought was the truth on that incident. And then the previous incident with the U-Haul truck, I completely lied and knew I was lying.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, did you think you were right, but then you wound up being wrong? Or did you know you were wrong and then you tried to cover it up?
All right. Yeah.
I have that in racing sometimes. I'll go back and I'll think to myself, I'll be like, man, that fucking kid was such a dick. And then I go back and I look at the footage and I'm like, I dive bombed him 5 times. He was probably really fed up with me. So it's like, maybe because driving was boring, you know? But in the final race of the 2024 F1 season, Max is starting 3rd behind both McLarens, and into turn 1, Max fucking throws it up the inside of Oscar. He's like way back.
Yeah.
And he just fucking sends it. And they probably could have both made it through the corner, but Oscar didn't expect him to throw a move like that. So Oscar drove within his means, within his right, and they spun out, and it fucked up both of their races, right? And Oscar on the radio was like, "Yep, move of a world champion, good job." And Max was like, God damn it, like I went for it and it didn't work. And after the race, everyone was like, "Oh, Max, like, you know, you were a real dick to Lando in Mexico and you fucking like ran him off the track and then said to fuck himself and whatever. How do you feel about this?" And he was like, "Yeah, I went and I watched the tape and I went over and I apologized to Oscar immediately. Like, you know, it was a long shot move and I probably could have been a little more cool about it. So yeah, I apologized." And they were like, "Damn." And so they went and they talked to Oscar and he was like, "Yeah, he apologized. I get it. You know, there may have been a gap and he went for it. I can't judge him for that. It's cool." And they're like, the reporters were like, "Fuck, bro." Cause they like really want to hate Max for it. They were upset, but it's sometimes you think you're in the right and then you get more information or a clearer perspective. And then you're like, "Oh, I actually wasn't," right? So the lady that pulled out in front of you, in the BMW, probably woke up at the hospital like, some guy flew into me going triple the speed limit.
Right.
And then she saw the dash cam footage and was like, "Oh, I'm 85 and shouldn't be driving. I was parked parallel in a fucking 45-mile-an-hour road." Sometimes you just get updated information and you realize you were disillusioned, not technically wrong, right? Like you were wrong but didn't know it.
Yeah. Actually, your story with Max and Oscar touched on a really funny Simpsons skit I saw earlier this week. And it was like people only celebrate those news reporters were looking for like juice.
Yeah,
And they were looking for something controversial. And
Yeah.
you know, I saw this Simpsons skit where all these people were at an air show, and this guy is flying this plane, and he's like dive bombing to the ground, and they're like, "Yeah!" And then he swoops up, and they're like, "Oh!" And then he's flying towards the building, and he barely avoids it, and they're like, "Oh!" And so then he does all these tricks, and then he lands, and he gets out, and he's like fine, and he's like celebrating because he's like, "Oh man, I did an awesome performance."
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "But," and some guy comes up and stabs him, and it dies on the ground. Everyone's like, "Yeah!" Right? And so it's like this look for like controversy, the like, you know, something to like eat at is so funny and interesting.
You know what's weird is I think it's largely an American thing. Like, do you remember I have this thing where Americans when they're watching sports want to watch the opposing team lose. And Italians watching like motor racing want to see their hero win. So it's like Italians feel joy when their guy wins and Americans feel like fucking anger and like when their guy win because your guy's lost. It's very peculiar. It's like an aggressive, like, I want to see the worst.
Boston sports teams are really famous for that. Like the Boston Red Sox fans and the Boston Bruins fans are like some of the most aggressive fans in the state.
Yeah.
You know, probably like second to like Alabama.
Yeah.
You know,
It's weird to me. It's weird to me, but I grew up with the gentleman's sport, so I don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But
I guess I did too.
That's what I have for section 1.
Me too.
Okay, section 2. Why admitting to mistakes is constructive. When I was younger, I felt that recognizing my mistakes wasn't really important. I often felt that admitting I fucked up wasn't constructive for anybody. I felt bad about what I did, and admitting I did it would make the other person feel bad too. I thought that if I were able to lie over it, no one would get upset and life would go on as it normally would. For example, my brother and I were once playing baseball in the front yard with a broom and a football or some dumb shit. They were not standard basketball things. And I had backed way up with the baseball bat and he had backed way up with the ball to throw it super far, and so I would try to hit it from that far away, and it came at me, and I had to take a couple steps backward to hit it. And when I reached back, the baseball went straight through the back window of my neighbor's van. And
Oh no.
I look back, the ball comes and lands on the ground. I realize I put the baseball through my neighbor's car window, and I'm like, fuck. So I grabbed the ball and I grabbed the bat. My brother's standing there, and he's like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, go inside, put the baseball in the attic, put the football in the whatever, like hide it. And so we hit everything, and we just start like playing video games inside or whatever. And so of course my neighbor comes out, and of course they come knock on the door because like we're the only kids on the street. So of course we're the ones who fucking did it. And so my mom comes back and she's like, were you guys just fucking around outside? And we were like, been inside playing video games all day. Look, I'm in the middle of a video game. And we go out front, and there's police out there, and they're like, dude, someone tried to break into our neighbor's car. And I was like, that's so strange. You guys should check your cars to make sure that they're locked, because we don't want anything to happen to our stuff either. And I never said shit about it. Never said shit about it.
Really?
Yep. We just let it happen, because the fucking ass whipping I would have gotten from my parents, I was like, dude, not going to say anything. The cops are here. Like, it's a big deal. They think that it's hoodlums, right? There's a bad neighborhood a couple streets away. Maybe it was one of them. Who knows, right? I don't know why you'd break into the back window of an empty van to break whatever. Like, they were just confused about it. But I let it go, because I was like, look, right now, nobody hates anybody. People are just confused. If I fess up to it, everybody hates everybody and people are mad, right? And then my parents have to pay money and shit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my not a great example of why it's important to admit to mistakes, but an example in which I did not.
The first thing I have down here is, how do you build yourself up without learning from your mistakes? You can't climb the mountain if you believe or emulate the fact that you're at the top already.
Right.
And it's like, it's okay to be wrong, and it's good to be wrong, because then you have something to tackle and to work from.
Yeah.
Right? If you're just constantly, telling lies or trying to mask stuff over to keep yourself at this, kind of aura of I'm at the top, you know what I mean? And everything is fine, everything's good and dandy. That isn't constructive.
Right.
That doesn't build you up.
Right.
But everyone makes mistakes. It's just a matter of whether you admit to them or not, and give yourself the opportunity to grow from them and fix your flaws.
Yeah. I have here, admitting to mistakes is recognizing that there is room for improvement in a specific area. You cannot improve if you don't recognize that you have an area to improve in. So admitting to the mistakes is recognizing, it's like checking yourself into rehab. Like, you can't fix your alcoholism if you don't admit that there's a problem.
Right.
So if you admit to a mistake, then you can fix it, right?
I heard a funny Shane Gillis skit. He was talking about, I think, his father-in-law. He's talking about how his father-in-law is an alcoholic, but he'll never admit to it, because he'll be drinking on a Monday, and Shane Gillis will come up to him and be like, "Hey man, like, why you hammered at like 4 p.m. on a Monday?" And he's like, "Well, it's football tonight. Man can't have a drink."
Yeah.
And then Tuesday rolls around and he's drinking super heavy, and Shane Gillis comes up to me. He's like, "Hey man, like, it's Tuesday, like, why are you hammered?"
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's no football, man. Like, I gotta drink something,
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you never admit there's a problem, you'll never find the solution to the problem.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Additionally, being honest and telling the truth and admitting to your mistakes increases credibility and trust.
Yep.
And I think that's super fundamental to good relationships and keeping good people in your life. If you're only keeping the people in your life because you're putting on a facade or lying, kind of like this, it's almost like a Great Gatsby style of fear, where it's like, I have to fabricate this life that like people think I live in order to gain credibility with the people around me. If anything bad happens, like, I got to mask it over and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, that's not, like, that will come back around on you one way or another in the future. Right. And it's better to just build yourself up where you are and, work from the person you are today and actually grow into that person you want to become, rather than just trying to emulate or mask to become that person.
Yeah. An honest person. Actually, I think I might be misremembering this movie. I think that The Gladiator with Russell Crowe is a great example of the hero being an honest but not perfect person, and the villain being a outwardly facing, quote, perfect person who does bad things. They both have done bad things, but one owns up to it and recognizes it and grows from it, and the other tries to cover it up to like get people to think that he's perfect. And people love the guy who owns up to it, right? Because everyone's done stuff that they're not proud of. Everyone's made mistakes. Everyone's done fucked up stuff.
Right.
But you've seen the John McPhee episode with Joe Rogan, the guy who goes solo into Afghanistan to kill everyone. He's done fucked up shit, but he's honest about it, right? And there are other people who, have committed atrocities and, just pretend to be like a friendly neighbor. And that's not cool.
I actually had it's an interesting experience at church. I was thinking about this. Like at the end of every service, they ask like if anyone would like to come to the altar and pray, and whether they'd like the pastor will pray with them for whatever's going on in their life, blah, blah, blah. Right. And most of the time, like maybe one or two people will come up, maybe. And then this time, the pastor who was speaking was a guest speaker. And they asked and no one came up. And so they kind of told a little bit of the story and asked again. And like 10 people came up, including me. I also came up. And it was really interesting because it was kind of like this. At first, it was like, I don't want to admit that I'm doing something wrong, right? But then it's like, how does that help you? How does that help build you? How is that constructive? You know what I mean? And it was really interesting. Like there was a level of like acceptance, like it's okay that you're making mistakes or sinning in this case. Like, it can be forgiven, move past this, move forward, figure out what you're going to do differently, etc.
Right.
But it's really warming to see people, just generally speaking, even if I wasn't one of the people who went up, it's just warming to see people admit to their mistakes, because inside, even if you're not going up, you know that you've also made those mistakes. You know what I mean? And I think that's really powerful.
What mistake did you make?
I felt I didn't necessarily go up for a mistake that I was making. I was going up for like, the past negligence of like my health and like my nutrition and my fitness and my life. And I just wanted to have some strength going forward. Cause at that point I was like really going through a mixture of like, am I going to be able to like hit all these marks? Like I've tried this stuff before, I was kind of going up for strength more so. And it's kind of like an experience of like, do you want someone to pray with you and like help you through this, right? And so I went up for that.
Got it. So it's not like a mistake so much as it is like a sport.
But many people do go up for mistakes, right? Or many people do. Like there are people who go to those, who go up there who, may have screwed something up in their marriage or whatever, right? Like it's a similar atmosphere. I guess my point in telling the story was like, the atmosphere of admitting you have to a mistake, like it's okay to admit you have a mistake. Just because everyone isn't doing it doesn't mean that just because everyone isn't admitting to the fact that they made a mistake doesn't mean that no one is making mistakes. Right. And so I just kind of wanted to play that and kind of show that, after a little bit more convincing, there was 10 people that went up. Or whereas initially, like there was no one who went up.
Right. It's kind of like the thing from earlier where like they make you feel not alone.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of people that go up, right?
Yeah.
Or even if only one person goes up, that like the pastor still prays with you, right? So it's like you're not even if you're the only person who goes up.
Right. There was also this really interesting thing that I read. It was talking about the power of the first person who does something, right? Like pretend you're at a concert and it's a seated concert. The first person who stands up and starts dancing, like they show that dancing is a good vibe, right?
Right.
But the first follower is really critical, because the first follower shows that it's okay for everyone to get up and dance.
Yeah.
Not just for him to get up and dance. I thought that was really interesting. It's like, that first person who goes up, like it may still feel like, oh, like, whatever. So, like they got their thing going on. But when someone else goes up right after them, it's like, oh, like it's okay for anyone to go up. Like there's kind of like that reality that sets in that I like, and you see that in admitting to mistakes even. Like when I've talked to other people about, admitting when you're wrong or admitting when you're making a mistake or stuff like that. Like I've consistently been surprised that even when I admit to like, really like shit that people would largely discredit me for example, like cheating on my girlfriend or something like that. And I'll talk about that. Like by and large, that's something that a lot of people would discredit someone else for.
Yeah.
But like when you bring it up in an honest manner and you're like, no, I screwed up. These were the reasons that happened. Like I messed up. I made this mistake, blah, blah, blah. Like there's a level of like, man, I get it. Like I've been there too. Maybe not in that exact thing, but I've made mistakes that I've greatly regretted before.
Right.
And there's like that level of honesty, I think, is way more valuable than the potential better outcome of lying through it.
Right.
I
totally agree with all of that. I have an interesting pivot on the first person to do something. It's not exactly on brand with the admitting to mistakes, but the power of being the first person to do something is impactful in record setting. And I had this realization in record setting. So being a first person to break a record or make a record.
Got it. Okay.
So like Sir Edmund Hillary. Do you know who climbed Mount Everest in the least amount of time? Do you know who climbed it fastest?
Man, I've heard the name before, but I can't remember, to be honest.
Me neither. But I know Sir Edmund Hillary because he's the first person to climb Mount Everest. Similarly, who's an F1 driver with 7 World Drivers' Championships?
Hamilton.
And Schumacher.
Yeah,
right?
Schumacher. And Fangio was the first to have like a big run.
5. Yeah,
right.
Fangio had 5.
Yeah.
He was the first person to do 5 in a row.
Yeah.
And I think that Fangio and Schumacher and Hamilton, or Schumacher.
Did Hamilton get 5 in a row? Because he had that break with Rosberg. Was that 2019?
Yeah, I don't think that he got. I think Hamilton.
I don't think he got 5 in a row.
No, because there's Schumacher and Fangio who got 5 in a row.
Yeah.
Several of them had. Hamilton had 4 in a row.
4, yeah.
But Schumacher will always be remembered. I mean, for many, many reasons, but he'll always be the first to get to 7 World Drivers' Championships.
Yeah.
Huge milestone, even if some people go on to get 10, right? Fangio will be remembered for 5, right? And it's because they're the first to do something
Schumacher.
like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Schumacher has that emotional moment where he breaks down when he surpasses the Ayrton Senna's number of wins. So he's now the most race wins that an F1 driver has, and he breaks down in the press conference.
Yeah.
But he'll always be remembered because he's the first. And that's interesting when it comes to record setting, because you can optimize something, but you will not always be remembered for making something better or doing something faster, but you will be remembered if you're the first to do it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Graham Bell.
Yeah.
With that telephone, even though there's debate about who was actually first, he was the first, or the light bulb with, Thomas Edison, although Nikola Tesla, but it's just, it's a good point. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think that,
maybe we could tie it into like, kind of being the first person to admit you're wrong in a group also has a lot of power.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that kind of sets the tone for the group a little bit. Like
especially
if you're like in a Alcoholics Anonymous meeting style meeting where everyone's like kind of talking about like their problems and stuff. Like if you're the first person to go, then you kind of set the precedent. You know what I mean?
If you're a leader as well, if you're a leader who can admit when they were wrong, then I think that your people trust you more, because it is a building block for trust.
Yeah.
Right. Is it admitting when you do something wrong? And if you're a good leader, you don't do many things wrong. So when you do something wrong and you admit to it, it's more impactful because you do so many other things right. It would be easy to just skate right by this and, just lie about it or whatnot. So yeah, I think that the only other thing I have for this section is it's understandable for someone to be upset with you for a time if you do something wrong, but let's face it, you fucked up and you've earned it. But so long as you truly accept responsibility for your actions and use it as a learning experience, that hatred should dissipate over time. If it doesn't, that's an indicator that the person you're interacting with is not growth-oriented. So if you fuck up and the other person is pissed at you for a while, that's fine. But if they continually bring it up for years, that's not a growth-oriented person, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't believe that moniker. I don't believe that the moniker "once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic" is true. I think you could beat alcoholism and then go back to like a comfortable state of drinking that, right? But if your partner, even years after you've gotten better and stopped, still like gives you a side eye or gives you shit every time you have like one beer and like, labels you with that, that's not growth oriented. You're not helping me get where I want us to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. That's an interesting thing I've had with the tea now. I've started drinking like once every other day.
How dare you? Do you think that's okay? Do you think you can handle that?
I drink
That
like
type of shit.
4 to 8 ounces, maybe like 2 days in a row and then I take a day off, or one day and then I take 2 days off, whatever. I just drink when I want it and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that there is a certain percentage of people who would look at that and be like, "You're going back to it. You're screwed." Right? But it's like, no, like it's within my control.
Right.
Like I can choose to screw myself over,
Mhm.
but I don't plan on doing that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and even then, it's like now wrong is subjective, right? Because there's an argument for, well, that much tea doesn't have an impact to my health other than I'm dependent on it. If there's a dependency, right? And even then, even if it does have a negative impact on my health, it's not your health. I can do what I want with my body. And it's like, okay, that's fair too, right? Like, if a father drinks heavily, then that puts the rest of his family in danger because he's the provider and he's the protector. And so if he's drinking heavily, that influences his ability to do that as a father. But if you live on your own and you don't have any like children or a wife to be responsible for, what you do to your body is kind of up to you. So even then, it's like, you don't have space to judge because it's my body and I'll do what I want with it. Thanks. You know what I mean? But in terms of your own goals, I agree with you. Yeah.
Want to jump to the next section?
Yeah. Last segment, have we ever admitted we were wrong? So now we've identified why being wrong is not only okay, but actually actively constructive. It's one thing to talk big talk, but admitting to our own mistakes is the best way to practice what we're preaching. So tell me about a time you fucked up and how you handled it, or several.
Well, actually, it kind of dialing back to the
Like not dialing it,
Yeah.
dialing back. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Dialing back to my life updates, I talked a little bit about focus and like really focused work and like kind of eliminating the other distractions in my life and just really honing in on the work to be done. And so I think that the first and most recent one that comes to mind is like I had to come to the realization that like I was wrong in how I was approaching my day and I was not being as productive as I could. And like that was the first step. I was like, it's okay. You've made this mistake. Now just move past it. Make a change that matters.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that was definitely a recent one. In terms of, like kratom and nicotine intake. Like I admitted that like I was taking in way too much and I needed to dial it back and go into, go through a detox and, come back to it with moderation if I so chose.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another place that recently I've had to admit I was wrong, right? And then we talked about a few other examples too, but what do you have?
Interestingly, those are both subjective. Those are
Yeah.
wrong. Those are wrong in your eyes.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of your nicotine and kratom journey, it's not wrong to have 20 milligrams of nicotine a day, and it's not wrong to have 50, and it's not wrong to have 60. Your perspective on it changed, and thus your expectations for yourself changed. So your goalpost shifted, right?
Yeah.
So there was probably maybe like a month or a couple weeks time span where you felt bad about what you were doing and wanted to stop but didn't, and that's where you're being wrong, right? If you are breaking expectations that you have set for yourself. But up to that point, like the vast majority of it, I think, you weren't beating yourself up about it because you weren't breaking any expectations. Similarly, with the time focus
it gets into our debate about like objective and subjective, right and wrong.
So I have a definition for it, which is it true or false, and is it breaching an agreement that you have with another person? So I have two. Number one is actually about a time that you were wrong.
Mhm.
I was wrong a lot in college, and I had a great deal of practice with it in like TSD exams, thermal system design, because, dude, when you tell
I don't think I got anything right on any of those.
when you tell us, I told Grace the other week because she was like, "Oh, I'm thinking about like, when we have money going back to get my degree in engineering just to say that I could do it." And I was like, "Don't, it's terrible. Don't do it. Like if you're gonna do it without having to take the tests or get grades because it's just gonna demoralize you." And she was like, "No, I think I could do it." And I was like, "I know I know you think you can. It's an uphill battle, you know? And so I told her, I was like, we used to take these TSD exams where he would give you 2 weeks to take the test. And she was like, oh, you could pick a time whenever. And he was like, I was like, he hands you the test and he's like, turn it in 2 weeks. You can work with a buddy. You can work with the other kids in your class. You can use the textbook. You can use Google. You can use ChatGPT. You can use fucking Chegg, right? And she was like, wow. And I was like, no one scored above a 40 with the curve. And she was like, what? And I was like, that's how fucking ridiculous these problems are, right? So you have a lot of practice being wrong in college because 90% of the fucking answers that you write down are not correct. You just have to deal with that, right? But yeah, an example of it is actually an example where you were wrong. And it was when we were going through the SAE budget and we couldn't figure our math out. And there was like a fucking $3 difference somewhere or something like that. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
It was like I thought we had $3 and you thought that we didn't have $3. And I was showing you my math as to how I got to it. And you were doing the math like on pen and paper. And you were like, I don't think it adds up. And like we discussed this for like 3 hours.
It was a long time.
But you weren't so adamant that you were right that you just blew me off. You like tried to figure out the solution. You were like, maybe I'm wrong. Show me why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a constructive way to be wrong.
And you ended up being right. And then I was like, I think I realized where I was making the mistake. It was something silly.
Right. Yeah. And that's a categorical, like, okay, well, my math is wrong, so I'm just categorically wrong about it, right? Not subjective, like you're moving goalposts, right? And then here's another one. When I went through my breakup in my senior year of college, the girl who I was dating and I were on the same sports team. And we were on speaking terms, but we weren't dating or like hooking up or anything like that. But she asked me explicitly when I started like getting back out there again, she was like, hey, I know it's not my place, but you know, out of respect for me, could you not like tell really gross stories at practice or like, you know, show up with hickeys on your neck or anything? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then 2 weeks later, I showed up with like a fucking necklace of like dark hickeys, like really dark hickeys. And it was really hot that day, so I took my shirt off and like, I mean, they're fucking, have you seen this photo? Oh, it's a lot. But that's an example in which you're setting the standard with someone else and then you're breaking that standard, right? So like cheating. And that's not categorically false or correct because technically there's nothing wrong with having hickeys, right? Like you could argue morally or whatever, but like, it's not a right and wrong like math. It's not like math being right or wrong. These really, dude, these darkened up so hard. There's another photo.
Oh yeah, that is bad.
Yeah. But that's an example where you set an agreement with someone and then you breach the agreement, and that's not okay. And Grace and I had this conversation driving to Thanksgiving because there are some people that we know in the Kava community who are each married and have kids and are hooking up with each other. And Grace and I were talking about the definition of cheating because some people think cheating is just watching porn on your phone and other people think cheating is fine so long as it's like, you know, not penetration. Everything else doesn't count. So ultimately what we discovered was cheating is a breach of an agreement. So if you both agree that watching porn is cheating and then you watch porn, you've cheated. And if you both think that it's fine to go like, you know, hook up with other people so long as you don't fall in love with them, then you can go hook up with other people and it's not cheating. Cheating is a moving goalpost and you just have to set an agreement and not break that agreement. And so once you set the agreement for yourself, like, okay, I'm making an agreement with myself that I'm not going to do lethal doses of nicotine anymore. Well, fuck, I'm currently hooked on nicotine and now I have to stop.
Right.
So once you set that agreement for yourself, then I think you could say from that point on, so long as you did it, you were wrong. But I think from the second that you set that goal, you were in a consistent state of getting better with it, right? Yeah. It's still like positive differential, right? Anyway,
very interesting.
Do you have other examples?
Yeah, that's a good amount to think about there. I don't have a great response, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
You could just say I'm right.
No, I want to formulate my own opinion.
I'm just teasing.
Debate.
You know what's crazy about that hickey thing? I saw a TikTok the other day. A guy was like talking to a group of people and he was like, if I ask you to tell me a funny story right now, you'll all freak out. Your assholes pucker up. You don't have one ready to go. It's not because you don't have interesting stories. You do. You just haven't, like, you don't have them at the top of your head. So as you start to live your life, every time something that could be a good story comes about, document it. Take photos, write it down, write out a little script. And I thought Oh my God. Dude, the closest I ever came to quitting engineering and becoming a stand-up comedian is when I told the SAE team about the worst blowjob of my life. And what's funny is I documented it by taking photos and videos of that and then writing out a little skit to tell on stage at an open mic night. And that was so much fun. It's a story I have until this day.
Yeah.
Those hickeys were from that girl. That's what reminded me about it. But I thought it was so funny. And so going forward, similar to your, I'm going to write out when I have, when I'm wrong about something and then what I do about it. I'm going to start writing out more fun stories to try to have like
Yeah.
a couple of my podcasts.
Well, I'm thinking this is part of the reason I wrote this earlier on the podcast.
Yeah.
I wrote tracking your mistakes in a journal. Track if you care.
Mhm.
You know.
Alex Ramosi says the fastest
Yep.
way to track talent is to see what metrics they track and the quality with which they track it.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
58% workout record. There we go.
Yeah.
But-
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll be, I'm tracking more stuff now. I've started tracking my finances a little bit better. I've been okay about it in the past, but I'm getting better now. Gonna start tracking my fitness a little bit more, tracking my nutrition, not just making general improvements. So stuff like that. But
Let me ask you something. If you got married and you had a joint bank account with the other person, would you still track finances?
yeah, I think it makes sense.
I would too. My parents are going through it right now because that is not an agreement. My mom, from when my parents got married, before they got married, my mom didn't track her finances and my dad did. And so when they got married, my dad was like, hey, do you mind keeping receipts so I can track our purchases? My mom was like, I don't want to do that. And he was like, what? Like, we should set a budget. And she was like, I don't want a budget. And he was like, okay, well, can you at least save the receipts so I can track our expenses? Like, I'm not going to throttle your spending. That's fine. But like, let me track the expenses. So she was like, fine. So she, turns in the receipts, and every month he goes through and he matches the receipts to the credit card and then tracks what their expenditures are. So like, if I'm jerking off in the shower, he can see that the water bill goes up 20%. And then he can be like, hey, Mason, stop jerking off in the shower. It's $400 a month. But the issue that they're having right now is my mom felt that receipt tracking was being controlling. And that's confusing to me because you're not controlling it at all. You're tracking. Like, I track the weather. It doesn't mean I can fucking control it. You know what I mean? But she said that bothered her and that made her feel like he was being controlling and manipulative. And so they had the disagreement on, they had money set aside for my brother and I for college. And my dad's perspective is, if they get scholarship money, we're not giving them that money. We only give it to them if they need it. And my mom's perspective is, they're getting that money no matter what. If they get scholarships, awesome, they get paid. They can leave college with a positive integer in their bank account. And that was a parenting decision that they didn't agree on. And all of a sudden, my mom started just telling my brother and I, like, oh, you're going to get this money. And then my dad was like, hang on, we have to talk about it. My mom didn't want to talk about it. They put it off for way too long. And eventually it got to the point where my mom took matters into her own hands and just started funneling the money to us. So she... I remember there was this one huge elaborate scam that she had me do. And this is an example in which I was wrong and didn't admit it. She told me, I'm going to have you purchase textbooks for the classes that you have. It's like $700 or $500. Buy all the textbooks that you need and then quick cancel the Amazon order. So you have a confirmation email that we can put in the files for your dad to see. And we'll withdraw the money from the 529 bank account, the college fund. And then I'll cash it and I'll give it to you. And then you have $500 to spend. Awesome. Dad doesn't think anything the wiser, right? Well, my dad thought that was weird because it's my senior year of college and I've never bought textbooks before because I always rip them from online or just don't use them. And he was like, this is weird. He also hasn't seen the textbooks anywhere. So one day my mom's out of town. He comes into my bedroom while I'm studying. He's like, are you okay opening your credit card account? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, that's where you bought the textbooks, right? With your credit card. And I was like, mm-hmm. And so I opened the credit card account. There's nothing in there. And he's like, weird. And I'm like, yeah, weird. And he's like, can I see your Amazon? I'm like, mm-hmm. So I log into my second Amazon account, not the one with the book order on it. Nothing in there. And he's like, So now it's looking to my dad like I never bought the textbooks at all. And yet my mom took the money out of the account, which shouldn't have happened. So my mom texts through my brother's phone to blow me up about this. And she's like, what the fuck? Like, dad's messaging me saying that there's no receipts and no tracking and anything. What the fuck did you do? You should have fucking known better. And I was like, I don't know, like half the information I should. You did not tell me about all this shit before, like we actually got into it. You just told me you're going to funnel me money. And I just had to not say anything about it. So she ended up ordering the books through my aunt. So my aunt's involved, and then smuggled them to me at college. And I also went to FIT and I checked out some of the textbooks. And I had told my dad that I just had them at my girlfriend's house. So I drove over to my girlfriend's house and I had her hold the book because I do a lot of studying in my girlfriend's house, in air quotes. And so I had her hold out the book and took a photo. It was a huge fucking debacle, right? And eventually my dad was like, listen, textbooks or no textbooks, you did not get charged for them, so you need to repay me that money. So I repaid him the money. So all this shit and the lying for a net zero outcome.
Yeah.
So since then, apparently, my mom has done some similar stuff with my brother. I don't know. I don't have the information on it. But my parents blew up and now they're, arguing and going to mediation about it and stuff. And I hear about it from both perspectives. And my mom won't admit to it. And I've sat down with her and I've said, hey, listen, the whole point of mediation is to progress and to build trust. And you build trust by admitting to things that you've done before. And she has such a break in reality. She'll say, I didn't do anything. And I'll say, you did. You did these textbook things with me. I did it with you. I'm aware. And then she'll say, well, I had a reason for it. It's because your dad was being controlling. And I'm like, okay, but you have to recognize that your rationale for doing something and the action that you took are unrelated. You can have done an action and feel that it's validated, but just because you feel that it's validated does not mean that you can say that you didn't take an action, right? And I'm seeing firsthand from her the detriment and the devastation that comes from not admitting to your mistakes. And in contrast, I've told my dad, I put together a whole package of all the information that I have, and I gave it to him, and I was like, here's exactly what happened. All of the stuff that my mom had me do to hide all this from you. And as a result of that, our relationship has gotten much stronger because I came clean about it and I admitted that I did it wrong. And, it's difficult when you're a kid because one parent is trying to help you and the other parent is trying to find the truth. And if you say nothing, they mistrust each other, but they're both okay with you. And if you do say something, then, maybe they're both upset with you, or maybe one's upset with you and the other's okay. There's just no positive outcome as a kid. But I'm not financially dependent on them anymore. I live alone. And at this point, it's just, do I value the truth or not? Yeah. And I'm at a point in my life right now, in contrast to where I was a few years ago, where now I value the truth over everything else. And so I'm comfortable coming clean about it. And it's a shame to see my mom not have those same values. Because I like to think that I grew up with parents who instilled me with these values. And not that I just, come up with them on my own. But I think it's hugely beneficial having these podcasts and self-reflective, periods throughout each week to help keep me on track and make sure that I'm on the road to being the type of person that I want to be.
Yeah, I agree.
But that is the largest and most recent example I have of admitting that I was wrong about something and being glad that I did it.
Very cool. Well, I have a good amount to think about too. In regards,
You should listen to the Vision 79 podcast.
I do. But I should more. Just in regards to like how I still hide stuff from my mom and Baba. I'll think about it.
Okay.
Very interesting.
No pressure one way or the other.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
That's all I got.
Awesome. So I'm going to change up the way we end the podcast every once in a while. Alex Hormozy says that the best way to give a presentation is to tell him what you're going to tell him, tell him what you told him.
Yeah.
So we start each podcast by saying what we're going to talk about, tell him what you're going to tell him, and then we talk about it, tell him, and then we end it with dial in, which is not telling him what you told him. So I'm going to finish it out.
Kind of is.
I'm going to finish it out by recapping. I'm going to tell him what we told him, and then I'm going to do the dial in.
Okay.
Also, when I write the chapters, there's like blocks, and then at the very fucking end, there's like one little blip that's the dial in, and it's not a very long portion. So all of this counts as the dial in. But today we talked about how to admit that you're wrong. It's not easy. Usually it's the right thing to do. It's constructive, I feel, in every instance. And that's not an easy thing to own up to, but failure isn't bad. Admitting that you're wrong isn't a problem. And you can overcome the difficulty of owning it by recognizing that admitting that you're wrong builds trust and ends relationships that don't build trust. So if you tell the truth about something and the person doesn't recognize you for it and doesn't want to continue constructing with you, Remove that person from your life. Because if you're honest about something and they don't accept you for it, then you're just not going to get anywhere with that person. So our dial-in quote this week is from Alex Mosey. It goes, "You can measure how successful someone will be by how much they take responsibility when things go wrong and how little they take when things go right." Thank you for listening.